Welcome to the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and share their inspiring stories. Now, let's get started with the show.
Matthew Connor here, host of the Cyber Business Podcast. Today, we're joined by Alan Schomaker, CIO at Loyola University. Alan, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Matthew. Glad to be here today.
It's great to have you. Before we get too far in, a quick word from our sponsors. Hackers are getting smarter. Is your security keeping up? CyberLink sells industry-leading AI-powered cybersecurity solutions that detect threats in real time, so you know about an attack before the damage is done, not after. Learn more at cyberlinks.com. That's cyber, L-Y-N-X.com. And now back to our show. Alan, for those who aren't familiar, can you tell us about Loyola University and your role there as CIO?
Absolutely. And it's we're Loyola University, New Orleans. There's 4 Loyolas around the country. So there's one in Chicago, West Coast, East Coast, and we're in the Gulf Coast. I've been here for 5 years now. I just hit my 5-year anniversary recently. It's been a busy 5 years for us. It's a Jesuit-based university here in New Orleans. We're about 5,000 students or so. We have a law school. It's part of the campus, and it's been, over the past 5 years, we've gone through a tremendous amount of change here on campus. When I came here, we had a 45-year-old mainframe system running our business applications. So that was the first task that I had to do, was help this university get off of a mainframe and move to a cloud-based system.
Wow. Okay, that's a big lift. 45-year-old mainframe. Nice. That's fantastic. So, let's talk about that a little bit, because I think, going from a 45-year-old mainframe into the modern age, I mean, and now it's, just as you did that, shortly thereafter, or about that time, AI hits the scene. And so, it's like they go from early tech to future tech pretty quickly. Is any whiplash there, or how was that received?
It's, we still have people on campus that say the mainframe was the greatest system ever, and they miss it, and they liked scrolling through the different green screens. And that's what they still want. It's kind of been a challenge, but I think they're finally, the technical side was easy. It's always the cultural side of changing, because you're changing business processes and pushing more of the duties back to the departments, and putting, you're trying to convince the users that I'm giving you more power to do things that you had to, before you used to have to rely on IT to do printing and do so many tasks. This is now in your power. They don't kind of see it that way. They were very happy for IT to do a lot of the duties in that case. And in the AI world, like everything else, every vendor, everybody's pushing AI across the board on every product. Some things really are AI, some are not so much. They're just using the term. It's been a transformational process for us across campus. For the students that try to do their entire university career through their phone, take notes, take tests, do everything. It's, like other universities in the past week, we experienced the Canvas outage that affected so many schools across the board. It's been up and down. We've had one of the things we had to encounter during the implementation, we had a hurricane come through New Orleans. So that kind of shut us down for about a month while we were in the middle of our implementation process.
Nice. You mentioned Canvas, and it's really interesting because you look at, and you mentioned AI, and I think that as we see the cyber landscape is changing so drastically today, right? Because now the bad guys have AI. And so it's an entirely different world. And we're seeing attacks now at machine speed. And I'm sorry, it's too fast. You can't defend against that with traditional tools. And the machines are finding ways, they're finding 0-day exploits and taking advantage of those in real time. And so I think that clearly you have to be fighting fire with fire, and we have to be using, AI in our security stack. This is my take on it. I'm happy to, I'm excited to hear your side of this, but I don't think it makes any sense to rely purely on legacy security tools when when our adversaries are using, advanced AI, attacks. So what's your take on this? I mean,
No, I totally agree. And I think, if you go back into the 70s when, police started using radar, and then the same company started producing the radar detection devices.
uh-huh.
And then, the next generation radar guns were being used. Then the next generation radar detectors were being used. We're kind of in that same race now in AI between the hackers and the defenders. As tools increase on one side, the other side tries to get better tools, and it's a race going back and forth. And it's, from our experience, it's really, they are exploiting the, trying to find the defects in your security or your network or your penetration in different ways. But it's also using AI to hack against users and find, because that's where they're finding most of our security issues are, because users are letting them in. They're opening them emails. They're clicking on phishing attempts. They're responding to the social engineering, and AI is getting better at that. We've been defending recently. We had an issue against uh, ghost students in our online program, and I know this is a problem that's been going across to many universities, hitting their online students, where you have AI hackers, AI agents are using AI to become ghost students and fake students. And the whole purpose of that is to commit financial aid scams or financial aid fraud and get the financial aid or Pell Grant money, and then they disappear. So
Wow.
that's been a problem we faced, and I know I've talked to other CEOs at other universities, that it's becoming a major problem across the nation in that market.
That's fascinating. That is the first time I'm hearing about this. That's interesting. So how do you combat it? What's your approach?
We've implemented a tool to help our admissions team vet the identification. So they do, IP location, um, I look up address, phone number verification, SSN identification, and kind of correlate that data,
Yeah.
and kind of help determine, is this a real person or not? One of the ways we found out we had ghost students was when we started looking up addresses. Those We found out that the addresses being submitted were homes for sale being listed on Zillow.com, or and that kind of thing. So that then we're like, okay, we got a problem. We need to help vet these students a little bit better, rather than just accept uh, whatever papers these people were being submitted.
Yeah, isn't that something? Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting. Um, wow. Yeah. And I think that it really does come down to it. You mentioned, the AI being used in social engineering, and I think the only way to really defend against that properly is with AI, because if the end user gets tricked, and that's the easiest way in. I mean, you look at places like MGM, where they've got all the money in the world. They're focused on security. They've got a very, it's a casino. Security is their thing, right? And if they can be fooled by social engineering, and allow people to get in and take advantage of that, even on that administrator level, then it really should be opening people's eyes to, how do we, as a much smaller organization, without that level of financial resources and focus on security, how do we combat that? And And I think that that is where these AI tools, like Darktrace and others that are monitoring every account, they're monitoring your every user for how they act, how they normally behave, and they're monitoring the network. And when something happens, it says, "Oh, wait, this isn't normal. Alan doesn't normally do this. It doesn't write these kinds of emails. In fact, this isn't even in Alan's voice anymore. This is weird. I'm going to stop that, and we're gonna call for an adult to make sure that this is what's happening." And I think that's the future. I think we're getting a glimpse at some of these security products that are coming out and using machine learning in that way. I think are doing a great job. But curious where do you stand on this?
No, I think it's going to continue to evolve. And like I said, we need the tools that can respond at machine speed, especially, for organizations like us that don't have 24 by 7, people on duty or, after hours, on weekends
Yeah.
that can, and as the agentic AI evolves and gets better, not totally, but allowing it to take some
Yeah.
actions, at least preventative actions,
Yep.
to try to stop a threat before it emerges into a
Yeah.
full incident.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. I think you nailed it. It's not about giving it full autonomy to take over, the job of security professional, but having the tools that can step in there and do that. And then the administrator gets the alert on their phone and can check that out, especially if it's after hours, and especially if it's a smaller organization that doesn't have a 24/7 SOC, on staff in-house to be able to manage that, to be able like, oh, okay, on occasion you get an alert and it's like, okay, that was Alan, or it wasn't, but you can investigate and release it, right there from your phone. I think those are things that really help the small organization. I as small organizations, I think, have to be leveraging AI even more than the large ones. I think on the security side, on the operations side, marketing, sales, you name it. And I think it we're in this really interesting time with AI because we get a lot of CIOs who come on and CISOs who are very reluctant. I don't want to say reluctant. They're very aware.
They reluctant.
Yeah. There you go. They are reluctant to just give it, not even necessarily free rein, but they're very focused on the governance part, the security part. And I think it's scary for a lot of people to kind of unleash AI, if you will. So how do you go about this? What's your perspective and focus on AI and how you help your clients, the end users, get more done and leverage AI without giving it the keys to the kingdom?
Well, and I agree to a certain extent that yes, the internal IT staff needs to be there to provide the guardrails and do kind of oversee and do the governance. But I think because there's been a lot of misinformation or not not full educational on the capabilities and the movies over the past 30 years that have shown how horrible AI can go.
Yeah.
There's this, also myth about, how horrible, there are people that believe that it's horrible, that we shouldn't use it at all. But I think, in our organizations now, like for us, and this is, maybe this is kind of anecdotal, but what I'm seeing kind of organizations, I'm seeing that response from internal IT of, well, we need to control this and put the guardrails, and we have to be completely in control over the AI policies, and to a certain extent, yes, but it kind of goes beyond that because you've got organizations now that kind of are proud of the fact that, well, we're a co-pilot shop and we don't allow anything else, or we're Gemini, or and that's it, and that's the only tool that we're going to allow. I think that's a little short-sighted because as we're seeing AI tools develop, one tool is not the best at research or marketing or writing emails. It's sort of a combination. I think part of this also because what we're seeing, and I can give you some examples of
Yeah,
what we've seen
please.
recently here at Loyola, how we have people in the departments that are solving problems And, I don't want IT to be the bottleneck. I want us to be in cooperation and work that out because, IT departments, we spend a lot of money on tools and software and infrastructure. And sometimes I think CIOs and IT people, they get committed to that and believe, well, we've spent, a sizable chunk of our budget on this ERP system. So we need to use that tool to solve a problem or to be the solution. And we shouldn't be using AI tools, to try to circumvent that. I don't think it's not circumventing it, but people get so entrenched and they're not willing to pivot because, what a CIO maybe 6 months ago or a year ago with the data that you had, you made the right call and you made the right decision. But things have changed now. And I think we've got to be open to allowing users that can solve problems on their own. And there's a couple of examples I have for this. So we have a registrar at our school now. He's just become our registrar. Our previous one has been here 55 years. She's now retiring, which she's awesome. But a couple of weeks ago, one of the issues that we've been trying to solve is grade changes on campus. And it sounds like a simple thing where if a student goes to a professor and says, "Hey, you gave me a C in this class. I think I deserve a B, and this reason maybe I turned in an assignment. It might have been late, but I turned it in, or I think you may have. I think I got a wrong. I think you misgraded this paper or this test. I think I got the right answer." And it's not uncommon for the professor here to go, "You know what? You made a good argument. I agree. I'm going to get your J. Yeah, you deserve a B instead of a C for the class." Well, the current process, it's kind of an evolution of the old, it used to be like a triplicate forms that had to get filled out. Well, that's now evolved into email. So the professor sends an email to the associate dean, and then he has to review it. And if that's approved, that goes to the registrar. And it's this whole email circle right now that sometimes could take 2 or 3 weeks. And if you missed an email or if you didn't follow up and it's just kind of not a very organized process.
Yeah.
They came to us, faculty came to us about a year ago and said, "Hey, can we improve this process?" In our current ERP system, there is a workflow tool that can do some automation. It's a little kludgy and there's some limitations. And we worked at it. And because of the different approvals and the routing and stuff, we could get it about 80%, but it really didn't work quite the way it needed to. And so we kind of we put it on the back burner and said, well, we'll get back to that. Our new registrar came in, and a couple of weeks ago, he came to me and he said, "Hey, Alan, I'd like to show you something. I think I've got a workflow worked out for this grade change process." I said, "Great, let me see what you did." And so he showed it to me, and he used ChatGPT to create a Google form with scripting behind it. It logs the request from the professor to a Google Sheet, sends the email. The email has a button attached to it, approve or deny for the associate dean. It's very elegant. It's very simple, but sometimes simple is elegant.
Yeah.
And it documents, it creates a log of who approved what, when it happened, all the stuff. If an email is sent, if it isn't acted upon in 2 days, it sends a reminder automatically. We have to do a little more vetting and make sure the security is in place. But I think we're going to roll this out to production in the next 2 weeks. And he was almost hesitant to tell me about it because he thought I was going to come in and just say, "Nope, I'm not allowing this." Yeah. And I'm not going to let this happen. And he thought it might shut him down. But I'm glad he did it because he knows the process, because he deals with this on a day-to-day basis. I don't. None of my staff do. And when I talked to him, I said, as we're evolving on this, I said, well, how long did this take you to create? He said, well, I had it about 80% done in 8 hours. And then over about a week, I had to refine it after some testing and did some more of the stuff. So maybe like 16 total hours of man hours. He's built this very elegant solution to a problem that we've had on campus. And I'm trying to encourage people to think like that and find ways to solve problems, especially in your department, because when we've tried to work this through the workflow software that we had as part of the ERP, we spent probably a month trying to get this to work, and it never did quite work.
Yeah.
So he found a solution. The funny thing is, as he's showing this, he said, well, look, I've also built this dashboard for our class scheduler. He goes, can I show that to you? Yes, show that to me. So what did you do here? And he's taken, report data from our student system and our room system, and he's created this great dashboard for scheduling classes around campus throughout the year, and putting classes in, so he's got the data for, what course, how many students are in it, and then matches that with classroom size. And he's built this AI tool that just goes out and schedules the classes for him. And he said, this now, because he inherited this position from our previous, for the classroom scheduling, the old assistant registrar used to do this. He would spend about a week on a huge whiteboard with Post-it notes and scheduling classes around campus for a semester, and it would take him about a week to get everything scheduled. This process now takes about 10 minutes to lay out all the classes across the campus. And he has a dashboard now that he can see how full they are, how much capacity it has, and he can even share that. He's built it in where it's shareable now to our facilities team, so that if they have to do like an emergency air conditioning repair or electrical issue, they can see the building, how many classes are being affected, how many students are being impacted, if they do this repair in the middle of the day or if they need to schedule it after hours. So, if this is the kind of thing that I'm really happy to see, and I'm trying to encourage on campus.
Yeah, it's interesting because as you bring those technical skills down to the front lines, those people know exactly what's going on. They understand the systems that affect them, that they work in, and the limitations and the needs that they have, but they lack the technical skills to do it. Now with AI, they have 95% of those skills, if not often 100% of the skills needed to do it. So I applaud you. I think that's great. Are you worried as this continues that you'll have, kind of IT sprawl where you have, segmented products and stuff all over the place and it won't be centralized? Is that a problem that this kind of ability will create?
To some extent, but I think what I'm more fearful of, in every organization, there's always the shadow IT, people doing things, buying servers, keeping them in their office, or trying to fly under the radar. And every organization has that, especially in higher ed. What I don't want to happen is to have like shadow AI out there. So trying to be communicative and receptive to ideas. Going back to some of the other CIOs and CISOs you've talked to, yes, we have to be there to provide the guardrails because it can't be the Wild Wild West.
Yeah.
But what I don't want to happen is to have this shadow AI that we have no knowledge about or try to try to control that as much as possible. I feel if I'm open and, receptive to ideas, at least then people will come to us and say, "Hey, I have this idea. Let me run it by you and see how this plays out." Um, you know, one of the things I've done recently is the old data from our mainframe. We've downloaded it to a data warehouse, and we just haven't had time to create the views and reports for our team so that, for our registrar to go view old student records when they need to. So I had one day last week where I didn't have any meetings that day. It was a very unusual day for me. So I said, well, you know what? Let me see if I can pull this together because my past experience, I was a database administrator, so I kind of like playing with data.
Yeah.
Um, and in about 2 hours, I've created the views, and created access to this old legacy data that the registrar can now get to just downloading it through Excel, made the connections. Um, but the thing that was insightful for me was even, 10, 12 years ago when I was writing SQL scripts every day, I now did this, it would have taken me probably 2 or 3 days to do this work. And that was when I was, doing it all the time. And looking at this, I did this in about an hour and a half, and it wrote better SQL than I ever could have.
Right, of course.
And I'll admit that, um, because I've had one of the guys, one of our programmers on our staff here, just said, well, I just like writing code. I mean, I enjoy doing the coding like stuff. Said, I understand that, but the last numbers I saw, average AI IQ is roughly equivalent to about 160 IQ. Like, it's going to write better code than you will. He said,
Yes.
don't take that as an insult, but use your knowledge of the data and let it work for you. Don't drop the ego that you can write better code because you probably can't.
Yeah.
There's a few people that can, but just use it as a tool instead of, sitting there and banging away and writing your own um, Python code or Java or whatever. Let it do the work for you and get it, and then you become even better at it.
Yeah. You had mentioned using the different models for, for their individual benefits, their strengths. So is this something where you prefer kind of rolling out Perplexity to people because it uses the right model for the right, need, or not?
I think, we're still kind of, it's like a lot of higher education institutions. We have a AI committee, and we've created policies and try to do the governance for the university. We're still in the early stages. We're a Google campus, so Gemini is our, that's part of our
Right in.
licensing right
Yep.
now. So we get that,
Yeah.
included. So that's probably the primary tool that we use. With Perplexity's model, which is great. Um, I think but we're still in the discovery stage
Yeah.
right now as to where we're going to end up and how we're going to best use it. Because, across the campus, probably like many other organizations, we have some of our staff and faculty that they want to jump in to the deep end of the pool and they want to use AI on everything. We have some people that are hesitant and like they just kind of want to dip their toe into the shallow end. And then we have other people that are like, nope, not using it, never want to use it, don't want to touch it, like because I don't need it.
Yep. That's funny. Um, yeah, and it's hard when you've got Gemini kind of baked right in and you're already paying for it. You're getting it basically at no additional cost. And it's such a solid model. It does such great work. It's hard to I think it's challenging to then decide to allocate the scarce dollars to another model when you've already got such a great one that you're already paying for. So it bodes well for Google, but I think it would be really hard in that position to justify, well, we really need to spend the money on Claude or Perplexity. Do we?
Yeah, I mean, and look, Claude has taken off this year, like, has been it has done incredible things. And
Big fan.
Anthropic is, I'm a huge fan. I have my own Claude subscription. Um, I also have ChatGPT, and I down and what I encourage people, I kind of bounce between the three, and let's see which one does better at different tasks. And each, and I think we're starting to see the evolution of the tools are kind of because of the data that they're using and the models that they're creating, they're sort of finding their own niche and what one is better at doing this task and Claude may be better at coding over Gemini. And so I think as time evolves, we're going to kind of see that separation and each finding their own areas. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but that's kind of where I'm seeing right now. Each one's going to evolve and do their own thing and kind of specialize in that area and not try to be the one that can do everything.
Yeah. Well, and I think I think you're in agreement, or Perplexity is in agreement with you on that. And I think that's the whole premise behind their compute, using using the different models for their strengths. So I think there's something to that for sure, and nice to have it in one place where you don't have to keep sw going between and switching. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this AI race, kind of plays out. And to that extent, I'm going to ask you, how do you see this playing out, especially for education? When it comes to AI, you've already introduced at least me to um, this new fraud that's being committed with the shadow students. So I'm curious, where do you see AI playing a role now in the near future, and as far as your crystal ball can see?
Our business school is really, we have a great dean. He was an entrepreneur, and built some successful companies, and I think we're really fortunate here to have him as our dean of our business school now. But and he is very much into the AI band camp, and he's pushing his faculty to teach that to the students and he's very much of the mindset they need to have these the students that come to the university need to have these skills when they enter the marketplace. Corporate, employers are looking for these skills. It
Right.
will benefit them because the favorite saying is, AI is not going to take your job, but someone who knows how to use AI could take your job,
Absolutely.
or they will get employed over you if you don't
Yep.
have these skills. So I think, for us, because the students are using it, and we know that. We know they're using it. We can see it. There was a graph recently I saw from OpenAI that showed ChatGPT token usage, and and it was looking specifically at the education sector. And on June 1, the token usage drops like it's falling off a cliff. Well,
Yeah.
these are the students that have finished their exams and they've gone home,
Yep.
for the summer. So they're using it. Are they using it correctly? Do they know how to use it? No, they don't, because it's so brand new. We're such early in the early adoption stage of AI that I think this is the strength that we can bring to the students. How do you use AI? Yes, you can use it to write papers, but don't use it to think for you.
Yeah.
Or you've got to learn what's hallucinations or what's being made up, and how do you differentiate that? Especially if you're going into engineering or law or some of these other professions, it's got to be correct.
Right.
So I think that's where we're going, and I'm glad to see we have some deans on campus that are committed to that and teaching that to the students as they're coming up. Because I think, for the students that are coming up now that are in high school, they're playing with ChatGPT as a search engine, or and how to write a paper or send an email. But they're just scratching the surface. And we have some faculty on campus that are really teaching, how to use it as a tool. Just like, when I was, my bachelor's in computer science. So I took all the engineering classes when I was coming up. Yes, we could use the calculator, but we had to know how to do it. How does that differential work, or how do you make the integration calculations? So I think it's the same theory. We have to teach that same premise to the students on what's the right way to use this and how to think.
Yeah, I think that's the real challenge right now, because it's easy to try to let the AI do all the thinking for you. But where does that ultimately take you? What value does that create for you other than it gets the job done very quickly? All right, but at some point that leaves you, really deficient in your understanding and your abilities. I think one of the interesting things that we've found is that those people who are adopting AI and doing very well with it, it's not that they're using it as a search engine or just to write their email, but they're using their leadership and communication skills with it to basically treat it like it's an intern or an assistant, and building their AI assistant skills and knowledge of what they're doing, and then leverage that. So it really comes down to building up those communication and leadership skills that a lot of people don't have, especially if they're looking at it as just a search engine.
Right. Now, and I think if you have a bad process, AI is not going to make it better.
Right.
It's just going to make your bad process maybe faster, but it's still a bad process.
Yeah.
And that's where you've got to shake it out. And, and it's, in some ways, teaching an agent or an automation, it kind of, it helps you formulate in your mind, because you have to understand the process fully in order to teach it, just like you said, to an intern or an assistant. If I'm teaching, someone, or I'm mentoring someone on how to do something, if I don't fully understand it, then I can't teach it. I also have to do the same thing with my AI agent, and I have to be very specific in my communication and think it all through. What guardrails do I need to set in place? How do I, what do I tell it to stop? Where do I put the human in the loop? That creates a whole organic and a holistic view of solving any problem or trying to help a business process along the way.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Alan, this has been so much fun. And I think we could do this all day. But before we go, can you tell everybody where they can find out more about you and more about Loyola?
Sure. So Loyola University New Orleans, the website is www.loyno.edu. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm out there.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again, Alan. Until next time.
All right. Thank you, Matthew. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Cyber Business Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.